Hey there guys, we're taking a look at Assassin's Creed 2 running on the AMD Ryzen 5 5500U. Now the game is currently running at 1080p with the lowest in-game graphics settings, except for the fact that the textures are set to their highest possible setting, and we're running the system at its stock 15-watt TDP. So the level of performance that we're getting here is decent enough in terms of the average. The game itself doesn't seem to really go above 60 at any point. I think it might just be an engine limitation here. Even with VSync off, it's just not going over 60, but our 1% lows are noticeably low here, and it just seems to be that as we walk around in the city and things are being loaded in, we will have moments of stutter, and that's what's really causing the issues with 1% lows. It won't happen usually when you're in combat and you're actually just, fighting someone, but it will happen in those moments where you're just walking around and things are being loaded in. So it's one of those things where if you want to have the most consistent experience possible, you're more than likely going to have to raise the TDP. As it stands right now, the 15-watt TDP is more than playable enough here. Just note that you are going to be running the game at the lowest settings, and it kind of sucks that it's a game this old that you have to run like that, but it really just comes down to the fact that the 1% lows are an issue here, where it's just this constant stutter that ends up happening as you're walking around the city, especially if you're just on the rooftops just running around. You'll end up noticing the stutter a lot more as more things are being loaded in and things like that. So at the stock settings, the game is perfectly playable. I really wouldn't say that it's a bad experience or anything like that, but I would say that overall you're probably better off raising the TDP, and I'll show you why. So you'll see that once we raise the TDP to the 25-watt TDP using the AMD APU tuning utility, which is linked down below in the description, if you use it to just set it to the balance preset, which is setting a target TDP of 25 watts, you'll see that we're not even really hitting that full amount at all, mostly coming down to the fact that we are limited by 60 FPS here, but our 1% lows get a noticeable uplift, and overall the experience is just noticeably better. At this point, I would feel like most people are going to have a perfectly fine time playing the game, and you're really not going to run into any major issues. Those moments of stutter are occasionally going to be there, but it's really going to be super infrequent, and the stutter is significantly smaller to the point where it is going to be practically unnoticeable if you're just playing the game and you're not really going to be focusing in on what your FPS is by just looking at these frame time charts or anything like that. I do have a video guide that shows you how to actually set up the MSI Afterburner overlay if you want to see that, but in general, I've found that you will live a happier life as a gamer if you just don't stare at an FPS counter all day. You really start to realize that the value in a game isn't exactly the magic number in the corner there, as much as it is just actually playing the gaming experience. Now, that being said, if you have a terrible FPS, well, that just ruins the overall gaming experience, but everything is perfectly fine right now. The game is going to run absolutely great. We can, of course, raise the TDP even more to see if we can squeeze out more performance, but as you could probably tell already, there's not going to be much of an uplift. And really, that just comes down to the fact that we weren't even really hitting the full 25-watt TDP. I mean, this is already with the performance preset on the AMD APU tuning utility, which sets a target TDP of 30 watts. We're pretty much not even remotely close to hitting that number, and a lot of the times we're even going below 20. And again, it comes down to the fact that the game itself has a cap of 60 FPS for the most part, and really what just ends up happening is the uplift is noticeable in the 1% lows. This time around though, it's not as big of an uplift as we saw going from 15 watts to 25 watts. The 5 extra watts here are just introducing more heat without really giving us much of any gain whatsoever. So really, the game is overall very playable on this system, and the fact that we're not even really being maxed out here actually means that we do have the headroom to actually turn up some graphics settings. Now, what you will find ideal in terms of what will be the target performance level for you in terms of visuals and the FPS that you're going to be getting, that's really something for you to determine, but at least at the bare minimum settings, you are at least going to be able to run the game at a solid 60 FPS average with 1% lows that are pretty much in the 50s, which means you're going to have the smoothest possible experience like this. But as you can really see, the 30-watt TDP really is not necessary at all. You're going to be able to get most of the performance that you're going to want out of just the 25-watt TDP. I would really recommend going for that instead of just playing the game at stock, just because the 1% lows are noticeably lower at the stock 15-watt TDP. But really, again, it just all depends on your personal preferences here. So anyways, I hope you appreciated this quick look at Assassin's Creed 2 running on this system. Didn't go super in depth with this just because it's one of those things where the game is old enough that I think most people are going to be able to perfectly play it. And if you really want to mess around with the graphics settings and get them to look as good as you want, and you're willing to sacrifice some performance there, then you can obviously go ahead and do that. But to have the most rock solid experience possible, this is pretty much the way to go about it. But anyways, I appreciate you watching. I hope you found this video useful. If you did, be sure to subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.